Hi, everyone. In this presentation, I'm going to introduce to you spreadsheet software. Spreadsheet software are software for storing, organizing, and analyzing data in tabular format. And over here on the screen, I have an example of the program Google Sheets from the Google company, but there are others. So Google Sheets is one that's proprietary software, although you may be able to access it for free. And if you have a Gmail or Google account. The other spreadsheet software that is very commonly used is Microsoft Excel, which is also proprietary software, but you may have access to it via the university's agreement with Microsoft, and you should be able to download that software as well. Also, there is the open source software, Calc, which is the kind of like Microsoft Excel, and it's from LibreOffice, which is an open source version of spreadsheet software. So these are some iterations of spreadsheet software, and whatever software you use, you should find very similar functions in this context. Now, in the next video, I'm going to be using Microsoft Excel, but in this first one, I wanted to show you here with Google Sheets. So you can use either one as you see fit, although some functionalities may be slightly different across different software, so you need to figure out how to do those. As you can see here, the file, there's a name here on top of the file for the Google Sheets, and then also you see here there are multiple sheets. So this is one sheet, and then here there's another sheet of other data. So this is kind of one spreadsheet table or environment, and each sheet is a different one. Since this software is organized in tabular data, we have columns and we have rows, and then we have cells, which is a specific column with a specific row. In terms of visualization, we can kind of move around the columns here. So if something is kind of hidden behind the column, we can kind of stretch it out. We can also do the same with the rows, and to do the manipulation all at the same time, you can select one over here on the heading of the column, select, press Shift, select another one, and then you select multiple columns. And if you adjust one, you should adjust them all to the same length. You can also select on the same, you can select on the rows, select one, and then press Shift on the keyboard, select another one. And they're different, and you can either scroll them like this to change size, or you can right click and then go to maybe row height. So on the other software, there's a row height. I don't see a row height over here. So you can't, or maybe resize rows. So 23 pixels, let's say 20 pixels. It's slightly smaller. Right click, resize rows, 30 pixels, and so on. Notice that we can select each cell, and each cell has a value. So the value can be text value or different or numeric value, but the value is going to be here on the function bar up top. You can, once you move your mouse to the line and see that little hand, what you can do is kind of move it around. So now I'm clicking on the mouse and just holding the click. And then if I let go, I'm just moving from here to there. Control Z, undo. Another trick here, once you select cell, is if you click on the right bottom and you just stretch, it's going to repeat that same value. Now, if you had numbers, for example, 1, 2, 3, and you wanted to just continue on the sequence, the computer program will figure that out, that you have a sequence, and if you click on the bottom right and stretch, it should like continue one new value per cell. However, although with spreadsheet software, we can have all these different kind of manipulations and write content almost freewheeling. So you write a piece of text here, a piece of text here, another piece of text here. Generally, when we're dealing with data in this kind of software, is we're dealing with kind of relatively well structured and consistent data, such as this COVID data that I have here on a separate sheet. And notice how I named the sheet here. I give a name that makes sense to the sheet. And notice how this data is very well organized, kind of keeping the format of the rows and the columns. So every row is kind of an instance of the data, except the first row. The first row is different because that's the label headings. But then every other row is actually an instance of the data. It's a date and then some number of deaths and confirmed cases of COVID. And each column maintains that same data type and the same data for that column. So there's a state. So every cell here in every row should be a state. You should not add some data quality number or a date here. It doesn't make sense. The date goes here. All the dates go here. All the death numbers go here. All the death confirmed goes here. All the hospitalized go here, and so on. So this is how one usually works with data analysis in spreadsheet software. But it's not necessarily exactly how we're going to work with it. Let me show you something else here that is useful, which is the filter view. So usually we can create a filter view from the heading labels of the data if they're kind of structured, organized like this. So the way to do that is you click on the selected columns. If you click here, you select all of the columns, or you can just select some like this. I want to select all of the columns, all of the cells in this one row. And then I go to filter. You create a filter. It looks like a funnel and other programs as well. And you create a new filter view here. So it's actually running. It's taking a little bit because there's a lot of data in this file. And there it is, it appears. And once you create a filter, which is actually over here, the software program kind of recognizes all the values in the filter and lets you search through the values. So it facilitates kind of analysis and browsing of the data. Okay, and you can also remove here, you remove it this way. There are different ways to remove it. So even though sometimes we can add data almost kind of in a willy-nilly way in the sheets of the spreadsheet software, often we also have this very structured data. So for example, if you wanted to create in this intro page over here, in this intro sheet, if I wanted to create a new separation here between this content and this content, for example, to put some headings, I can just right click here, insert one above, insert one row, another one row is inserted, and I can write name, and I can write some label heading, and then kind of type, and then maybe others, year developed, and so on, cost. And notice that there are a number of other formatting options here that are on the ribbon, for example, to make it bold and to center alignment and so on to facilitate reading. However, when we do have a very strict format like this, be careful because you can't just, if you add, for example, insert one above, insert a new row above here, I cannot just kind of add anything here, add a new heading. Doesn't kind of make sense. So this, you have to kind of follow the format of the other data. However, depending on what you're working, one of your sheets can be, you can create multiple tables within one sheet. So for example, I create one here, and then I maybe put some borders to separate it. And then I can select all of these. So I'm just clicking, left click with the mouse, and kind of just drag the click, let go, select the whole table, Control C, copy it. I go into the top left corner that I want to see the table pasted, and then I just go and paste it here. So you can kind of have multiple tables within one sheet also, instead of this very strict format. Right click, let's say cut doesn't, it's not good, but delete row is good. So in this way, you have various ways to organize your data in the spreadsheet software. Over here, you see various tools to use, insert rows, insert columns, which may be accessed in different ways. Also notice that I'm going to make up some numbers here. Notice how we can also, once you go to the formula bar over here in spreadsheet software, you can see the values, and you can also use what we call cell referencing. So let's say instead of cost, years since developed. Instead of cost, because I'm very flexible format, I can just stretch this column over here so I can clearly see it. And I wanted to show you a brief calculation with cell referencing. So notice how each cell has a specific address. This one is A5. We always begin with the column and then the row. This one here is B7. This one here is G5. Now, what we can do with the cell referencing is create all sorts of interesting calculations. So for example, if you want to know how many years each software product has been developed for, I'm going to first create an equal sign here. So if you don't use the equal, it's just going to take whatever value you have. But if you use the equal, it indicates that you have a formula. So my formula is going to be the current year, which is 2021, minus the year that it was developed. So what was the year that was developed? Here is 1997 for this one, but I don't need to write specific 1997 because I can just have cell referencing as a variable. So I write C5 and enter. Now I get a number there, so equals 21 minus C5 equals 24. So years since it was developed, that's 24 years ago, which is 21 minus 1997. Now what I can do to populate the other ones automatically is just drag this down here. Fortunately, the computer will actually figure out that every time you drag it down, you actually add one of the numbers. Notice that this is C6, and I hit enter, and then this is C7. So it automatically corrected. It didn't just copy C5 over here and C5 over here again. It actually correctly incremented the values. Now, it doesn't always do that, but generally it should. And maybe you do not always want to do that, but if you do, this is how some of the cell referencing and some of the formula calculation works in spreadsheet software. Next time, we'll go further in depth into creating a budget with spreadsheet software.